Good morning. I'm Saini at the University of Canberra. I'm in my weekly conversation with Michelle Grattan. Michelle, good morning.
Hi, Deep.
The last week has been pretty tough. Terrorist attacks around the world. In London, of course, a very sad set of events there. Then in Tehran, then in Melbourne. And that has triggered Malcolm Turnbull to call for the State Attorney General making decisions on parole for people with the criminal records and especially terrorist links rather than the parole officers. How do you think this is going to go down?
This has come out of the Melbourne attack where the attacker had a very violent background and also some association with terrorism before. He was acquitted in a case involving a plot to attack an army base. The proposal is in line with what happens federally. It seems a reasonable proposal, although there was some state pushback because it was seen as trying to really avoid responsibility and blame in an issue that of course is galvanising the community increasingly. But I think what would happen is that it wouldn't necessarily lead to better decisions on parole, but it would certainly lead to more conservative decisions, because a politician having to give that final tick-off would be pretty risk-averse.
Now, the Fair Work Commission had lowered the penalty rates, and now they seem to be suggesting that they want to slow the implementation of their recommendations down. What do you think is going to happen in this area?
This is an area of great argument, of course, between the parties. Bill Shorten has a private member's bill that aims to negate that Fair Work decision in February to lower Sunday rates. Now, that bill's not going to get through, but this is an issue that will be contested right up, I think, until the next election. The Fair Work Commission decision this week was for a very gradual implementation of this lowering. The decision in general applies just to a limited number of sectors, especially retail and hospitality, but of course it affects a whole lot of people, and people often on very low incomes. And in making its implementation decision, the Fair Work Commission has aimed, I think, to minimise the hardship that workers will feel, but nevertheless they'll feel some.
And staying with the economy, Scott Morrison's statement that the Australian economy is growing at the slowest rate since the big crash of 2008. How worried should we be about a statement like this coming from a senior political leader?
This is off the back of growth figures that show that we are still growing, but we're not growing very fast at all. And that, of course, has a lot of implications for employment, for people's remuneration, all sorts of things. Nevertheless, Scott Morrison says that the budget figures did take account of a bit of lumpiness during the financial year, and therefore we shouldn't be alarmed. And he's putting a positive spin on this because he says that the world economy is looking better and we can expect some upturn. So the message coming from the government of very ordinary figures is still a positive one. Of course, if that expectation is not realised, then the government is in a good deal of trouble, because economic management's a very important thing in voters' minds, and ordinary Australians are in trouble in their financial situation.
And it is a strong part of the ruling party's platform. That's where they are strong.
That's where they always argue that they have an advantage. So they will be watching the next couple of quarters very carefully.
Then there is the Alan Finkel report on the energy, and he is proposing the idea of a low emissions target scheme. Do you think this is the kind of scheme that will finally bring to an end the debates that have been going on the energy issue and perhaps bring all the parties together.
It will be a very big call, Deep, to conclude that, and a premature one. This scheme is not the optimal scheme for dealing with emissions, but nevertheless it is the scheme that probably has the best chance of getting support across the political spectrum. Bill Shorten's been making some positive noises about it, but it's very, very early days because you could get the opposition saying, look, we want to be bipartisan, but there are aspects of this that we don't think go far enough or whatever, so they could take a backward step. On the other hand, there's also always potential problems within the coalition. We've had Tony Abbott going out ahead of the release of the report even, warning about anything that would impinge too much on coal, and obviously wanting to make a fight of this issue, he says, with Labor, but one wonders whether he's really talking about Malcolm Turnbull. So yes, there's some light on the horizon here, but we shouldn't be running to conclusions that it's all going to end well. It may, but it may not.
Let's hope that light prevails, because this is such a complex issue on which finding an ideal solution or a perfect solution would be probably impossible. We have to settle with some sort of a solution that is at least optimal.
And it's such an important issue for governments and of course internationally, and all this is going on against a very uncertain background with Donald Trump announcing that the US would pull out of the Paris Accord.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I'll be traveling next week and I look forward to seeing you a week from then. Thank you.
See you then. Thanks very much.